Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Top Talk session. Hi, Mark. I know you're in the wings there. How you doing?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Thanks for having me back again, Jay.
It's always good to have you back, and by popular demand. But actually, I'm really well. I love working with you, but I like your photography as well. But great things that we're talking about tonight, and really pleased that you uh, were able to come back and talk about them and some other things that we're going to share with them, especially the exhibition. But we'll get into that later. Guys, we want you to interact with us tonight. And so, if you have any questions you have for Mark, please use that question panel. Mark has allowed plenty of time. We've got 4 questions, and we'll either interject them as we go, or there's time at the top. And obviously Mark wants you to interact with him if you're interested in getting in touch with him about any of his workshops or just keeping track with what Mark's doing. It's shootthestreet.co.uk or Instagram there at Mark Seymour Photography, but I'll be sharing those links with you via the chat panel also. So Mark, I'm going to hand you the screen because I know you're going to tell them about you as a photographer. I always like our photographers to do that, but I know that's part of your talk. So I'm going to hand you the screen over. I'll let you know that everybody can see it, and then I'll hand all of the proceedings over to you. Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you very much for everyone for coming in tonight, and please feel free to sort of ask any questions. I'd like it to be as open as possible, and I'm really happy to answer your questions. Firstly, just literally a real quick 2-minute synopsis about myself and where I come from and how I got into photography. And I've got a slide here that was taken a long time ago, and that's me on the left-hand side as a photographer. That's when I first started photography. I've never been formally trained. I've just sort of developed, and I turned pro in 1986. So, gosh, that's like 30 years ago now that I've been a professional photographer. My style originally was obviously with film, and it was more sort of staged. I'm a wedding photographer and an observational documentary wedding photographer. So it kind of means that I like to go to a wedding and just observe, and my ideal client is one that says to me, Mark, I trust you, just get on with it. I don't want to talk to you today, I trust you to deliver. And these are the types of images that I like to capture. And just typically about this one here, we've all seen kids at weddings, and you get little girls at weddings and they always do handstands, and it's just a case of sitting, and I sat on a chair for about 5 minutes and just watched them play and clicked away and waited for that sort of decisive moment. Just a couple of wedding pictures before we go on to the sort of the street photography, or the more sort of the street stuff. Again, this is an image that was just literally taken last weekend. I shoot really wide angle lenses, typically 28 and 35 all day. Probably 70% of my weddings is taken on a 28mm lens. So I'm very close to people, and the way I've developed that style is by shooting personal projects and street photography. But I like to shoot an image where I can tell a story within a single frame, and we can see that this is a wedding day because the dress is there, the veil is there, the makeup's being done. And I was lucky this day, it was a nice bedroom, and with a decent makeup artist, and she posed the bride, or put the bride in front of the window, so we had some good light there. And finally, moments, and I do a lot of Jewish weddings as well, which are really made for the documentary photographer because there's so much going on there. And this is an image that was fortunate to win an award with the ISPWP. It's an international award. It's pretty damn hard to get anywhere. I get one award occasionally, but it's one of those moments where we've managed to freeze the guy's face in between his legs, and it's one of those moments that tell a story. So how did the documentary style take hold? It started probably about 10 years ago now, and I attended this course in Dallas called Foundation Workshop. It was quite a small class. It cost me an absolute fortune to go to. It was a very small class, but 2 of my mentors were Pulitzer Prize winners, and it was pretty tough. I got a real roasting and was told I was too comfortable with my own style, and I needed to sort of get wider and get closer. that old adage from Robert Capa, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close. So off I went over there and had 4 grueling days. They were 14-hour days, and I really felt like quitting halfway through the course. But my project was to cover Dallas Fire Station, or Allen Fire Station, which is a district of Dallas. And day 1 I got a real roasting, and day 2 one of the lecturers took all my lenses away and left me with a 20mm lens and said, get on with that. You're too comfortable with your 50mm and your 85mm, and that was the real beginning of my journey into sort of the wider angle lenses and getting in closer. So you can see here you've got a nice sort of layered image with the subject in the middle and the guys on the left sort of holding you into the image. And another one here again, it's a layered image, and this was part of what happened on day 2. Day 1 wasn't so good, but day 2 I got lucky, and there's a few little things happening around the fire station and the ambulance service, which are of course combined in America. So after I got back from Dallas, I wanted to practice this stuff, and practice, and I just decided that the only way to really do it and get good at wedding photography and take on what I'd done here as a little project was to go out and start doing street photography. And the reason I call it easy street is because I started off quite gently, because I was afraid and I was scared to get in close, and I didn't want to upset people. So I adopted this style, very similar to Cartier-Bresson type of style, who was a real icon of mine, and I studied his work, and I decided that the best way to do this was to select a location and wait for the right subject to enter the frame. And if you look at a lot of Cartier-Bresson's work, I think that's what he used to do, because there's this perfect background, and then you've got this great subject that's come in or gone out of the image. So that's what I used to do, is scout for good images or good locations, and then go back when the light was good, and kind of sit there and we'll wait for the right subject to enter the frame. This particular image here was taken in Portugal, and I waited about half an hour for this image, because there was various different people walking through this slot, and it just needed the right character. It's a bit like a portrait studio, really. You get some great families coming into your studio, and you get some families that you just need to do the right job, a professional job, and when you get the right family, you go to town and you have a great time and get some great images, and we're all chuffed to bits. And here's another one. This was taken in London a couple of years ago, and it was on the South Bank in London, which any Londoner would know, a bridge, and I saw this big patch of light, and I saw some people walking through it. I thought that could be interesting. I stood there and waited, and probably about 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden this kid ran through, and I took 3 frames of it because he was pretty quick, but that was the best of the bunch. And it's kind of that image where I call easy street photography. You're selecting everything beforehand, you're setting everything, and then you're just waiting for that person to enter your frame. So I started doing this more and more, and I thought, I want to start doing some projects, because I've got a couple of photographers that I absolutely love their work, and one of them is a Magnum photographer called Larry Towle, another one's Eugene Richards, and these guys do documentary photography, but they do projects rather than individual images. So whilst each individual image might be not quite so strong, if you look at the whole package of the images, they're really strong, and it tells a story about what's going on. A bit like I'm trying to do at a wedding. But Speaker's Corner is a nice, easy sort of route into that, because there's lots of things going on. There's lots of great subjects around. There's lots of interaction. There's characters. There's bantering, and you can get in quite close. So there's lots of things that are there for you already as a street or a documentary photographer, and that allowed me to work on things like my composition, angles, lighting, so just micro composite, just moving around a little bit to make sure that it was absolutely sort of perfect. And this is one of my favourite images, and from a project that I've done over a couple of years really. I've got a whole bank from Speaker's Corner. In fact, we do workshops there about twice a year with Nikon. And in fact, the last one, I think, Jay came along and from the academy, and we videoed it as well. And here's another one. It's looking for that that interaction between two people, and you've got lots of different cultures down there. It's a great place to go if you're in London. It's always on a Sunday afternoon. So we do courses there, but you can go down there yourself, and you'll get some great shots. And most of the stuff was done on a 20mm lens, so in real close. But I'm looking for that time when they're doing something together, or there's that sort of reaction that between two people rather than just one person. What you tend to find is a lot of people go down there and they shoot portraits or singular images with a long lens. It doesn't really tell a story. It's, a lot of wedding photographers use a 70 to 10mm lens, and they pick off people. And I want to see what's going on around them and tell a story rather than just capture a face laughing. And the only way to do that really is getting close, and the only way to get in close is with a wide-angle lens. I mean, this shot here, it's a beautiful picture with a lovely expression on the guy's face, and it was done on a 28mm lens, and I was literally probably about 2 or 3 feet for them. The other thing working at something like Speaker's Corner or any sort of busy location lets you do is practice, moving around in a sort of stealth-like way. And I mean that it's the fact that you can move around without being noticed, and just move into positions and get yourself there, look at the angles, move down, move up a little bit to let you get that image, and then move back out without them sort of noticing that you've taken an image. And you'd be surprised once you start practicing it, how good you actually get. And it's quite strange on the courses we run. Most people come along with 50mm lens or 85mm lenses, and we normally bring along some real wide-angle lenses like 20mm, 28mm. By the end of the day, most people are saying, "Have you got that wide-angle lens I can put on my camera?" So it's just gaining that bit of confidence. Let me just take a little drink. So the other place I go to a lot is India, and I started working with the Hope Foundation in India, and I do a lot of workshops out there with the Hope Foundation, so we get to raise a lot of money for charity. But before I sort of went on to the India images that I was going to share with you, I just wanted to just talk to you a bit more about this sort of layering and micro sort of composition. Another book I've got, and believe me, I've got a sort of probably over 1,000 books, all on street or documentary photography. It's quite a sort of archive of books, but I'm always looking at them, and I'm kind of consumed by this style of photography. But this one gets looked at quite a lot because it's called Magnum Contact Sheets. It's got the contact sheet on the left that shows how the photographer got to the image, and then on the right-hand side it shows you the image that is the winning image the photographer took, or the best image that he's taken. And I just thought I'd share with you a scenario that I took in India where something happened, and we shot through this, and we ended up with a great image by just working the scene. And I do that using these rules. So it's a compose and wait philosophy. So I've chosen this background again in India. I wait for the right lights, I've got that, and I'm just waiting for the right subject or something to happen. My exposure's already set, and so all I'm really doing is just paying attention to the detail. And when I say micro-compose, it means just moving up a little bit or down a little bit to the side, just to make sure that your background is perfectly in sync with your foreground, or there's things that are in the background that are not jumping out at you. And the background, as you know, is as important as the foreground. And then take the picture and stay with it, and don't chimp, just keep taking until the moment sort of finishes. And this is my little contact sheet here, This is how many images I took of this little scenario here, and you'll see I've highlighted one of them, which is, if you like, I feel the best image from that little batch there. So if we just go through these quickly and go through my thought process as I was taking these, I saw this woman on the rail sort of cleaning pans, and it was kind of interesting with the parallel lines, etc. And it's not a bad image, and these are straight out of the camera that you're seeing here. The camera is a Nikon D750 with a 35mm lens here. But it's an okay shot, and I just thought, there's something happening here, so let's work this situation through and see what happens. And I stood up and I thought, let's try and get a bit of the background in and everything that's going on. And then I thought, it looks too messy, and then I've got this big lump of highlight at the back where your eye goes down the track and then it goes out of the photograph and you're kind of lost forever. And I come back down and try to cut that out, and again I wasn't quite happy with it. It's quite messy in the background, and I just couldn't get a scenario where I was getting everyone's heads in and not sort of cropping off bits of the picture that I would have thought were important. And then in the sort of distance, I heard this train coming, and this is a live railway, and there's a railway station about 200 yards up on the right hand side. So I moved around a little bit, and she's sort of laughing at me, but then just carrying on. And there's a little girl on the left, and I've taken it, and I've got all this ugly building in the background that I kind of don't like, although it shows the old and the new, so it could be quite interesting. But the train was going past. It was going past reasonably fast. I shot this at quite a fast shutter speed, and again sort of just stayed with it and worked it. And these trains they're pretty long. They take about 5 minutes to go past. They're like trains in the US. They seem to go on forever. No doors on them. Everyone's just sort of sitting with their legs hanging out, etc. But I moved around and got the train more in the background. Another angle there, and then I thought, why don't I slow the shutter speed down and let's try and show some movement. So that's what I did there this time, and this is where I got kind of lucky. And all of us need an element of luck to happen to get a great photograph. And so I'm down low, the train's moving, I'm on a 15th of a second, I'm bracing myself, and I'm just watching this little girl on the left because I see her start to move. And she starts walking across the tracks and going faster and faster, and I'm sure in this country we'll be saying, there's a train there, it's dangerous, come over here, but that's where they live, it's life, and it's kind of normal over there. Things like that just happen, it's an everyday occurrence. This girl starts running now, and the woman's continuing the washing of the pan, and then I get really lucky, and a lot of photographers would go sort of, this woman walked across my photograph, but to me that's a great element, because she's suddenly going to create an edge to the frame and another dimension. So there she starts to walk across the frame, and you can see this girl's starting to run. So you've got these three elements now, and you're starting to get a really good layered image. And then you can see she's running faster. This woman's coming across the frame, and then this is the final image that I chose, and that I've edited and worked on in Lightroom. And I just wanted to share with you why I think it's not a bad image. And there's the next image after that. So the woman's walking across, and she's walked across, and it's kind of like it's gone now because she's covering too much of my frame. But going back, that's the reason I feel it's a good image, is that there's 4 layers there, and anyone that shoots layers, 4 layers is quite difficult to get. 3 layers is great, 2 layers is what we get most of the time, and there's good space in between. So between 1 and 2 there's a space, between the mum and the girl there's a space, and between the girl and the train there's a space, and I've cropped it down so that we lose all the ugly building in the background. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that image. It's probably a good time to ask any questions about those techniques at the moment, Jay. Hello? Hello? Jay?
Yes, mate. Sorry, but
That's right.
I forgot that I forgot I was muted.
I just thought that was a good point to see if there's any questions about sort of layering and composition after the sort of just the sort of scenario we've just gone through. If there was any questions, yeah.
Well, a few of the questions that have come through have been more about, which I know you've touched on already, but a few of the things were ideally, obviously, your choice of lens, which you've mentioned, sort of thing. I don't think we've gone in deep into sort of your kit choice as yet, but I know you've mentioned about using the more fixed lenses and stuff. That's the sort of
Yeah.
general question that's been coming through at the moment. Well, let's go there then. So typically, you know, whether it was Speaker's Corner or whether you're out in India, what are you carrying with you, really?
Well, yeah, I'm a Nikon user, ambassador, so kind of I use what gear that Nikon provide me. So I don't have the luxury of these small mirrorless cameras. Having said that, you know, I love the DSLR. This image here was shot on a D4. I don't have an issue with a big camera. The only problem with the big camera is that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, boy, my shoulder hurts because I'm carrying a heavy lump around. But I know that camera inside out, and I think whatever you're using, whether it be a small Fuji, a small Sony, Canon, Nikon, or whatever, the most important thing is that you're comfortable with the camera and you know it inside out, and you can move those dials and controls around without thinking about it. And I think that's the most important thing. I think as soon as you've got a black box stuck in front of your eye, whether it be the size of an iPhone or the size of D4, people know you're taking a photograph. So it's how you act and how you move around that creates attention or doesn't create attention. As far as lenses,
sorry, Mark, that was going to lead me on to a question that we've had, but yeah, let's do the lenses first. Sorry to interrupt.
No. And as far as lenses, I'm a prime person. A lot of the time I use 35 and 28. The last project I did in Vietnam, I just only took a 35mm f2 with a Nikon D750. I'm a great believer, if you've got one lens, you will get the photographs and you will work the angles to make sure you get it, and you haven't got to keep zooming in and out looking for things. If you want to get closer, you walk closer. If you want to get further away, you walk back a bit. If you can't walk back any further, you just get the right angle. But after a while, you'll know that lens inside out, and you will become a better photographer, I believe.
One of the questions, well, a couple of people asked a similar question, so I think it's quite apt because you almost mentioned it there, and I think you kind of have answered it really. So, do is it clear? The question, I suppose, I'm trying to word it right for you. Is it obvious that you're taking their picture, or are you trying to mask the fact that you're taking their picture? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think in this situation I've just explained here, she's aware I'm there because I'm sat on this rail track with a 35mm lens. So she's aware I'm there. But I think it's a case of, and it's the same at weddings. If you go in and you sit 3 foot from the bride straight away, that you set your boundary, and she kind of knows that's where you're going to be. Whereas if you stay the other side of the room all day and then all of a sudden you see something happen, you run over to her and then go 3 foot away, she's quite startled. But it's the case of anything. You sit down with someone in a coffee shop and if you just said, I'm going to take your photograph, do you mind? They'll start talking to you a bit, and after a while they'll go back to their own conversation, and then you can do the photograph. So they're aware of you, but I don't think there's any way you can't be aware of someone in this sort of situation. Some of the stuff I've done in Vietnam, people aren't aware that I've taken their photograph, and I'll come on to a few of those in a moment.
Brilliant. Okay, do you shoot aperture priority, or are you shooting full manual?
I shoot full manual. Just always have done. I've come from a manual photography background where there was no aperture priority originally. So I've shot manual. I used to always use a light meter, so I kind of, I get a good idea of what stuff should be, and with I'm normally pretty good. But it's just a practice thing, so it doesn't mean you can't use aperture priority or full program mode if you want to. I mean, Joe Bussink, a great wedding photographer, uses program mode and then uses the plus minus key. But nothing's right or wrong. It's what you're comfortable with. I'm comfortable using manual, so that's what I use.
Brilliant. And the last question for the minute, Mark, but I think this has come through once or twice actually, and it comes through when we talk about street photography and documentary photography, and people always ask the question about how are you able to use the images afterwards with regards to things like model releases and using them for stock or commercial use. So what are your thoughts and feelings there?
Well, if you're in a public place, they're your images and your copyright. If you're going onto private land, it's a different matter altogether. So far as using them for stock photography, if they've got people in like this, you can't use them for stock photography because you need a model release. But I'm not using these for these. I'm using these for my own purpose or for the charity for Hope, and we're going in there with the backing from the Hope Foundation. So another. Going back to the earlier question, do they know you're here? We've all got T-shirts on, and this was done on a course, so there were 3 or 4 other photographers around, and we've all got a T-shirt with the Hope Foundation written on it, which gives us access to the slums and in these areas, and they know that we're donating quite large sums of money to support the children in these areas, so they kind of leave us alone.
Oh, brilliant, mate. Obviously, you can use them for yourself for promotion, and in your book, if you were to make your own book or something like that, that's a different thing altogether, isn't it?
No, I think if you wanted to, I mean, if I wanted to use these in a book, these Indian images or pictures, if you could walk around the streets of London, if you do it, it's not a problem at all. I mean, there's many photographers who do it. Generally, the question comes, I'd say just get in there and don't ask. The minute you ask, you're giving the opportunity for someone to say no. A bit the same at a wedding. If you ask the vicar, can I stand here? He'll say no. Why don't you stand over there? But if you don't talk to him, you just go where you like because he's not going to stop the ceremony. So my philosophy is the same with street. Just go and take it and do it. And if someone says, I don't want my picture taken, just say, I'm really sorry, and walk away. And don't get into confrontation. Just walk away. And there's a million other people out there who won't mind their photographs being taken.
Brilliant, mate. So one last bit on this actually that's just come through. So you talked about, obviously you were sat here, you observed, you took several frames as we could see. How long would you say that you would have spent for this set of images? How long would you have sort of picked this spot for, and before moving
on? I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. I might have just been sat on the railway line, just minding my own business, waiting for something to happen. Because that's this sort of we're in a slum area here, so it's not like pure street photography where you're walking up and down a busy street looking for an image or just shooting randomly. This is a bit more, if you like, project photography rather than street photography.
Well, actually a couple of ones. We'll stay with you a minute because it's all relevant to this sort of set of images. Are you using any filters at all in this sort of bright climate?
No.
Answer to the point. Excellent. We've just done that. I'm just checking I haven't missed anything. I don't think so. No, we're good for a minute, mate. So we've covered everything we've covered at the moment. So if you want to carry on, you go ahead.
I'm just going to show you a few more images taken in Kolkata, and this one is the complete opposite. So these people, they could see me taking pictures and they're kind of wondering what I'm doing, I guess, because they're thinking all these things are going past. But I put it up there to demonstrate sort of layering and how to take a layered image. Another way to take a layered image, I mean, I focused on the Indians at the back, just sitting there chilling out by the bookstall, using quite a low or shallow depth of field, something like f2 or something, so that the foreground is blurred, and these people are moving. This hustle and bustle around there is unbelievable. But I'm looking for little gaps in between where I can, make these layers. So we've got the layer of the tuk-tuk on the right, little yellow taxi, and then we've got another sort of taxi, a human taxi on the left, and then you've got the couple with the guys in the middle. So you've got those sort of 3 or 4 layers there, and by putting those layers there, you can tell a story. You know it's in India straight away from everything that's going around it. Another one here, this is in an area called a Ghat, Ghat, which is down by the river where these guys sort of wash and all that, and these are sort of the clothes hanging up to dry afterwards. And I've got down quite low, and most of them are pretty unaware, and the guy in the middle is obviously aware of me, but I wanted to sort of get down low to sort of show all the clothes in the sky or in the ceiling. And I'm also looking for this sort of thing. This woman almost posed. Well, she did pose me. She saw me taking a picture, but what she didn't realise was, I could see this guy on the left, and he sort of looked up at me, and I acknowledged him, just with a nod of the head, which is often quite a good little thing to do, because I can't talk to them because I don't talk Indian or Urdu or any of their languages, but he just was aware of it, and he was kind of cool, and it's one of my favourite images that I took in Kolkata last year. There's that image we spoke about earlier. Another one taken by the railway line, little kid washing, and you can see this was later on in the day, and you can see the same woman there. She's sort of washing the pans, so I've kind of moved over because I was sitting on that rail before. Funny little story, also, and I've got some other images that obviously I can't share everything with you, but there were some guys playing cards on the rails, and 2 were sat on the rail and 2 were sat on the sleepers, and they were playing cards, and they hear the train coming, so they just put some stones on top of the cards, got up, the train went over it, and then they just got back and just carried on their game of cards. It was a little bit surreal. It was quite a funny moment, really, but for them it was just kind of everyday life. But again, here we've got these sort of 3 layers. We've got the little boy washing, you've got mum doing the thing, and the kids in the background, and you've got the train going by, and they're aware of me, but it's what it is. I mean, this is another image with sort of layering. Another thing I try and do more and more now is looking for the unusual in the usual. So I'm a bit more selective of when I'm walking around looking for things. And just walking through these streets, and they were preparing for a festival, and saw this situation where this guy was doing. I just, I saw it. I just crouched down, took 2 pictures, and walked off. And he probably wasn't even aware I took the photograph. And that was my favourite image from last year. And going one of the questions we were talking about earlier about your images, this image we've sold quite a few times, and we've raised quite a lot of money for the Hope Foundation with this image. I've also got it up on my wall. It looks absolutely stunning when it's printed big, but it's just, I think it's a great image that demonstrates layering, colour, position, and the other thing that makes the guy is reading the newspaper, so it's actually acted as a reflector, pushing light back into his face. He was aware I was taking it because he looked at me, and he just carried on reading like, I don't give a flying monkeys, what you're doing. And I was moving around just to get the sort of right composition, but the 2 guys in the back weren't aware of me at all. So just while I'm on that, just wanted to mention, if any of you out there fancy coming to India, we have 2 trips each year in Kolkata and Jodhpur. Go onto the Nikon training website, they're all there. You book through Nikon UK. If you come on the Kolkata one, the cost is about £1,200, but £550 of that gets given to the Hope Foundation. You get to go around the hospitals and out in the jeeps at night, and it's just an amazing experience. And you come back very humbled, and you've seen where your money goes, and it's most people come back just like, wow, it's an amazing trip. So I'm always looking for things to do because I'm looking for projects all the time, and I decided to start looking around religious festivals, and found this one in Sicily called Misteri di Trapani, and it goes on every year. And again, it's very similar to London Speakers Corner, but this just happened once a year, and these Italian guys who look like they're all from the mafia, and you wouldn't cross them if you had to, carry these floats for a solid 24 hours. These floats are extremely heavy. I mean, it takes about 40 men to carry each float. But each image by itself is not fantastic, but it's about telling a story over 20 or 30 images, so that you can see what actually happens at this place. And we've had this sort of set of images published quite broadly, and in fact the tourist board in Trapani have started using some of the images because it tells a story about what's going on rather than sort of singular images. And you can see that carrying it in the middle of the night. So again, it's looking for that place. And I saw this from the previous float, and I saw it around the corner, so I followed this float for about 10 or 15 minutes until I got the right shadow. One of the benefits of using the Nikon, and this was on a D4S, is that I can shoot these images at 10,000 ISO and get very, very little grain, which is more difficult with the smaller mirrorless cameras. And again, it's part of the story. It's not a great image, but that's the way they march. And then you can see the sheer pain on this guy's face. He's been carrying this thing for about 20 hours. I put my shoulder under it, and you couldn't even budge this float. It was so heavy. And there's about 40 floats going around the town, and they do a circuit, and it's all about sort of recreating what Jesus went through when he was resurrected. And that was one of the leaders. You'd see this guy. He was well respected. People come up to him, shook his hand, but he always went back into this pose afterwards. And I just thought it was a nice finishing image to sort of the little shows or slideshows I've done on Trapani. And then really quickly, Vietnam. I went to Vietnam this year. First time I've been there. And this is where I started sort of really honing down on some sort of skills regarding composition and looking for the unusual in the usual. And this woman was totally where I was there. This was like a little monastery, and I just walked in there and I just sat on the floor by her with the 28mm lens. And she was aware I'm there. The guy with the microphone wasn't, and the other ladies weren't, but I just stood there or just sat on the floor with her, took about 10 pictures, and then just walked out. But the key to the image was making sure the guy with the microphone was central in that door, because any little bit left or right, and he was crossing over, and it just didn't look quite as good. Again, looking for layers, and again, this woman was aware I was there because the roads are very narrow, but I saw her, and I just saw this guy walking further up the street about 20 or 30 yards. So I just crouched down, took a picture of her, and then just took 2 or 3 as this other guy walked past me to create the layer and the added interest to this image. Again, another one there. I see these little sort of these things that they carry around on their shoulders, and if you see various people around, I sort of bent down and try to frame things very, very quickly. And also, you're just walking around, and I saw this poster, and I sort of just hung around the other side of the street and was watching things. And this couple sat down, and she just sort of held her hand on her cheek, and I love it because it looks like he's hit her, and she's gone like, ow. And that's what I'm kind of looking for, little things like that now, so which is the unusual in the usual. So little story there. And then this one here, this fascinates me, this area, because it's full of wedding couples having their portraits done, and there was literally sort of 30 or 40 couples every sort of 15 yards or 20 yards around this lake having their pictures done, all identical. Everyone was doing the same poses, but I wanted to try and capture something that was a little bit surreal, and I got a little bit lucky, because one of the things as a street photographer is difficult to do is take pictures of people's faces. It's really easy to take pictures of people's backs or people from the side, but take it from the front. And good adage that if you talk to any good street photographers, can you see a nose? And if you look at this, apart from this little girl with the ponytail, you can see everyone's noses, and that's a good sign that you're in front of them and telling a story. Whereas if you were the other way, you'd be seeing all their backs. But I find this, I look at this image a lot. I find it really bizarre, the fact that there's this posing couple here and all this other stuff going on. And again, another one here. These kids weren't aware I was doing it, and taking pictures of kids is okay in Vietnam. No one sort of minds. In fact, people ask you sometimes, "Oh, take a picture of my child," and you do it and just walk off. But what I'm looking for here is a separation, so no one crossing over. Each person in their own little individual space. There was an image, with a guy up in one of the windows a little bit higher earlier, but I didn't get the kids in the right position, so that was kind of the best of the bunch. And then finally, my personal project, and excuse me, this is very personal to me. It's my father had dementia and passed away about 18 months, 2 years ago. And I've always had a camera in my hand, so they kind of they know I take photographs, so they ignore me all the time. And I said to Dad, I'm going to cover your life. Now you've been, what's going on? And he said, yeah. He was kind of up for it. And, they know I take pictures anyway, so it was no big deal to them. But I posed them outside here because this is the house he moved into when he got married, and he lived 4 days. He was born 4 houses up, so he's only moved about 4 or 5 houses his whole life. He's actually travelled further since he's passed away. He's been all around the world now. And this is where they used to date, so we sort of took them back there. This is Dad in hospital and with a harmonica, and so many lovely things have come from this project. And for example, this one here with Dad playing the harmonica, I had a guy called Anthony Danica, and Danica make the world's best harmonicas, and he saw this image and he just said, "I really appreciate what you're doing, trying to raise awareness for the Alzheimer's Association. I'd like to gift you a harmonica." And I said, "Oh, I can't play." He said, "Well," he said, "I'd just like to gift it to you, maybe put in a frame with your dad there and that sort of thing." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That'd be great." I said, "Can I gift you the photograph as well?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'd love to put one up in the workshop." 2 days later, this harmonica arrived, and it was a 24 karat gold harmonica that cost in the shop so in excess of £1,000. And we had so many people not gifting us things, but writing us stories about their experience with dementia. And this is one of the images, is one of the key images in the exhibition that we've currently got on. And I was asked to go up to Sky TV to be interviewed about what I was doing for dementia, and about the images and how hard-hitting they were, and about how real they were and gritty they were. And it was pretty scary. I mean, this image was, and I kid you not, like 60 to 70 foot wide. They had it up on their screen. So I was just thinking to myself, thank God I give them the high-res image. And so where it's taken me with this project is kind of surreal. I mean, there's me on Sky News, and believe me, that was scary, sitting there, because they don't pre-warn you. They just sit you down, then they mic you up and say, right, they just fire away the questions, and you've got 2 really experienced people, and me as a complete novice. But apparently they said I did okay, but they were probably just saying that, I guess. And then finally, we've had them. They've gone all around the world, and I met this guy about 3 or 4 months ago called Akaris Andeepa, and he came to another gallery of mine for my India images, and he said, we were just talking, and he said, "Would you like to show me the India images sometime?" And I says, "Yeah, I'd love to show you them all." He says, "Just pop by." And I went in there and I took all my India images, all nice, big and framed, because Lox's had framed them all for me, so they all looked beautiful. And he looked at them and he just said, yeah, they're okay, they're nice. And he said, can I see the dementia pictures? And I said, yeah. I said, how do you know about those? He said, I've been following you for quite a while with it. He said, it's a subject that's dear to my heart. And he looked at them all and he just said, they're amongst the best I've seen in this subject. He said, would you like to exhibit them here in the gallery? And I said, are you sure? And he said, absolutely. I mean, bear in mind, you can't see it from this point here, but this gallery is, I mean, and Acris says it's a mid-range gallery, and I guess in the art world it is, but this gallery, you know, they stock things like Picasso, Banksy, Damien Hirst, Andy Warhol, Matisse, to name a few, and they've got all these artworks on their wall. I mean, that image there is £75,000, and it's an edition of, I think, 5 or something. But anyway, he agreed to put my work there, and we were working alongside the Alzheimer's Association. For the last few months we have been to organise it all. And the exhibition went live this week on Monday, and Deepa have given me their space, their gallery, or a whole floor in their gallery for 1 month, till the exhibition runs to the 8th of October. And there are the pictures, and you know, we've got other pictures because I just had to take them, but we took down over £1 million worth of prints and put sort of Mark Seymour's work up, and it was kind of surreal, and you're thinking this shouldn't be happening to a wedding photographer or a documentary photographer. But we've had some great response so far. I've been interviewed by London Live, Channel 5. We're doing a Sky Arts interview next week on Monday. We've got a special events evening where hopefully we've been told Grayson Perry will be coming. So we've got it's really going well, and you know, we're going to raise some good money for the Alzheimer's Association. And the other thing Acris has agreed to do is put one of my India prints in his gallery for the following 12 months. So it's just a little bit surreal. So I have to keep pinching myself that this is really happening. But if you're in London or around and you want to go, the gallery is free to go into. It's open from 10 AM daily till 6 PM. The only day it's not open is Sundays. And if you're there, say just walk around, and even if you don't like my stuff, it's worth going to see the Picassos and the Damien Hirst and the Banksys, because you know, to get that close and see them, it's something else to behold. That's it really. So any other questions? I think we're probably quite close to 8 o'clock now, so that's all my contact details. If any of you are interested in street photography, just go on to Shoot the Street, register your details, and when things come along, we'll be in touch with you. We don't blitz you with anything. We do about one thing a month. And any other questions, Jay?
Yeah, we've got a few for you, mate. But again, thanks. Brilliant presentation, and I'm looking forward. I know I've seen most of the dementia images, but I'm hoping to get up there and see that with you in a couple of weeks' time. But we know we're sending Sam up to do some video for you. But you know, it's a brilliant exhibition, mate. Don't do it. You know, it deserves to be where it is, and a fantastic story as well, like the rest of your work.
It's funny. I mean, I just want to say one thing, because one of the other things that happened, and I'm not sure I've even spoke to you about this, is the exhibition has been seen by lots of people, obviously, or aware of it coming up. And we had a phone call from another gallery in Milan, and they said, do you mind if we replicate the exhibition during World Alzheimer's Month? And of course, you know, I just said, of course you can, yeah. And they said, how do we get hold of the prints? I said, well, if I give you the high-res images, can you print them to my specifications? And they've gone, yeah, no problem. So next week on the 15th, myself and Karen are flying over to Milan to open the exhibition.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely, that's brilliant, absolutely fantastic, and as I said, deserved, mate, deserved. Right, let's get, not loads of questions because you've answered a lot, but we have got a few for you. But quite interestingly enough, this one came in quite early. Greetings from, I can't pronounce his name, so I do apologise, but greetings from Kolkata in India. Thanks for inviting me to the webinar. I'm going to be joining you on that course, so it's obviously somebody who's already booked on it. But he's asking you a question, not about anything that you've talked tonight, but he's asked the question, Your thoughts on the term staged street photography? Is it really street photography at all? So I guess that people are talking about this within these sort of documentary photography areas. So does that make any sense, and your thoughts on it?
It does. Yeah, I know the guy because we were talking the other night, and I made him aware of the webinar, and he heads up the Kolkata Street Photography Association or something like that. So excuse me if I'm wrong, but thank you for coming in tonight to that guy. It's really appreciated. You know, Jay, it's like, what is wedding photography? What is street photography? What is portrait photography? It's whatever you want it to be. And you know, some people's version of street photography is to pose stuff and go and do pose street portraits. Other people is to do real raw stuff and, you know, not edit it at all and not take stuff out. You know, Steve McCurry, as we've all seen recently, you know, he edits his quite heavily and he does a lot of Photoshop on his images. You know, nothing's right or wrong, and it's what you want to do, because you know, you're the artist, and you know, it's your take on that particular view or scene. And you know, if your thing is that you don't want to pose images, don't pose images. But if you want to do pure, you know, you want to go around and find characters and do portraits, go and do it. I mean, I did a series of portraits in Vietnam where, you know, I saw interesting guys, and you know, there's a lot of dental issues out there. You know, a lot of people with sort of crooked teeth and all that sort of thing. And so I did a series of portraits where I cut their eyes off and just did, you know, their nose down to their chin, so it just emphasised their teeth. And I've got about 10 or 15 of them. And it's kind of an interesting way of doing a portrait. But is it street photography? I don't know. I think it's whatever you want it to be, Jay.
Oh, brilliant, mate. And yeah, I'm sat here thinking about it, but I think it is. I mean, it depends where you are, and it's everybody's interpretation, isn't it? So I think you've nailed that. Brilliant. Okay, a few tacky questions that came through. Do you choose a single focus point, or do you change the point quickly and recompose?
I do the second one. So I recompose quite a lot. I do move the little focus point around with the thumb wheel on the back of the Nikon. But generally I'll put it in the middle if I'm just walking around. It just depends on each picture. You know, if I'm looking at something that's happening up in front and the subject's going to be to the right, I'll just flick it over to the right a couple of notches. That's it. Hello?
Oh, sorry, I've muted myself again. I've got to get used to this button. Sorry about that. Just getting the. So obviously we've seen the majority of images we saw tonight. Obviously were black and white, but we saw the India color, the India shots were color as well. So are you shooting in black and white, or are you shooting in RAW and then black and white processing afterwards, or do you know what's going to be black and white in advance? Is what I kind of asking really, I think.
I love black and white. It's, you know, it's what I love shooting for. Having said that, you know, when I did the Vietnam pictures, some of them just didn't look right in black and white. So everything is shot in color. I'm a RAW believer. I will always think you should shoot in RAW. I'm not a person who says, you know, just get it right in camera and shoot JPEG. I want to shoot it RAW and get everything, so that, you know, if I need to highlight parts of the image, or I need to burn it, or if I want to be able to go back to it in 1 or 2 years' time and re-edit it, I can. My own belief is that as a professional, I should shoot RAW and give myself the best opportunity.
Brilliant. Oh, I think you mentioned this earlier, but it's a genuine question. Who do you use to print your great photographs?
I use Loxleys. I've got a great relationship with Loxleys. Loxleys are printed all of the India exhibition I had earlier in the year, and all of this dementia exhibition. I use them for my wedding albums. Yeah, I use them all the time. Really happy with them. And one thing I like about Loxleys is the customer service. You know, they've got a set of girls there, and if ever you get the opportunity to go up to Loxleys, which I'm sure you've been up there probably, Jay, but you know, they've got a big panel on the wall, so they can see how long a call has been waiting before it's answered, and they can see how long it takes to get answered. And I think from a customer service point of view, that's a great thing to have.
Brilliant, Mark. Sorry,
Okay.
yes, no, I have been there, and it's amazing, as you said, absolutely fantastic. Mark, one question to recap. I know we've touched on it once, but somebody missed the beginning. Can we just remind people your cameras of choice and your lenses of choice?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm shooting weddings, I use my D4S for sort of the fast parts, dancing, etc. The rest of the time, I've started using the D750s just because it's a lighter camera, and I use their smaller primes on it. So I use the 85 1.8, the 35 1.8, and the 28 1.8. So they're and the 20 1.8. I don't use the fast primes, the 1.4s anymore. I want to cut down on weight wherever I can. I do have the 1.4 lenses, and I do use them occasionally, but I think unless you're going to be shooting at f1.4, there's no point in having an f1.4 lens.
Brilliant, mate. I think I'm just scanning the questions, but I think we've covered them all, but there's a few things that I want to share with you before we go. Loads of thanks and praise, to be honest, anyway. Thank you for sharing tonight. But a few, actually, the messages that I kept on purpose. Well, there's one here, looking forward to seeing your exhibition in a few weeks, so they're already planning on going, so that's great. Oh, this was quite nice as well, Mark. I thought, first time I've seen Mark's work. I love his style, and I'm so glad I signed up for the webinar. Complete eye-opener. And this is the one I really wanted to share with you. Very touching, Mark, very brave of you. I lost my mother to Alzheimer's over 11 years ago, and I still can't look at any pictures from that era, so I can appreciate what it must be to have gone through. At least you are making a difference with yours and producing something really good, and that's a personal tragedy, so very well done, and a fantastic cause, and a great set of images. So I echo that hand in hand.
While you're saying that, Jay, it's amazing. You know, they went viral, these images, a year ago when the Daily Mail online published them, and it shocked me that the amount of shares. We had 4,800 shares on it, not likes, 4,800 shares, which is kind of phenomenal. And the amount of people that wrote very similar words or different words about their own family, it was really sort of heart touching, heart rendering. It was that people wrote from their heart back to me who don't know me about their own situation. But when I was taking the images, I actually found it quite easy to take the images, but the tears came when I was processing the images. You'd take them, and it was because Dad didn't know who I was at the end. But when you're sitting in front of a 28 or 30-inch screen, working on those images and making them into black and whites and dodging and burning them and that sort of thing, that's when the tears come, because it's hitting you for real then. So thank you very much to that person for that lovely comment.
But I mean, even the fact that it's brilliant that that these images are out there, they've been around the world, it's raising great awareness, for the charity and obviously of your work. But even if you had just recorded that for yourself, it's so personal, isn't it? And I'm sure, as much as obviously the tears came, I'm sure you're hand on heart that you're glad that you have them and not have them. Does that make sense?
Oh, I'm totally, yeah. I mean, a lot of people say, you're so lucky to have those images of your father. And one of the other things that's come from it is that I had a call 2 months ago from Care UK, which is another big charity, and they just said, we look after, we help carers who are looking after people with dementia. And they said, would you be willing to help us? And I said, well, yeah, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, we've got this family here, and they're the first Sikh family in London, and they come over all these years ago, and the father has passed away, and now the son is looking after his mother. He's given up work, and he's looking after his mum 24/7. And they said, will you go and take some pictures of them? And I said, yeah, no problem. And they said, well, how much do you want? And I said, well, what's the fee for it? And he said, well, we'll pay you, what do you want, £600 for a day? And I said, no. I said, just cover my expenses. I said, let's put the rest in the pot. And they said, well, how long will you stay there? And I said, well, whatever's needed. And I actually went back and spent 2 days with the guy. But we've got some fantastic images, and he's spoke to me since and just said, Mark, he says the images we've got are amazing about with my mother, and it shows how it is, and I'm really thankful for that. And I can kind of see it being a sort of a legacy almost, and trying to do more and more of this stuff for other people and for associations, and it's something, definitely a road I'd like to go down.
Brilliant. And just to round up, and obviously just to, to strengthen what we've talked about today, everything that we've seen today, they've all sort of been birthed and started from personal projects. Obviously, you're an established, well-known wedding photographer. That's what you teach for us on the site, as well as we've been lucky enough to come out with you on your street workshops and stuff as well. But it's the importance of personal work, isn't it, to keep yourself fresh, keep yourself excited, and enjoy photography, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mark, can I just, sorry, Jay, can I just make one little offer to everyone out there, because we've got a very special evening coming up on the 28th of September. It's invitation only, strictly invitation, so names have to be on the door. We've got about 140 people coming. We've got a guy called Paul Lamb doing some numbers from us. He's the top blues harmonicist in the world. And we've also got another guy called Phil Strawn, who's a recording artist. We've got the whole evening being catered by one of the top Jewish caterers. And we've got an auction there. Danica have donated a harmonica to be auctioned on the evening. Plus there's one of my prints being auctioned. But if anyone, if people sort of connect with me or go onto the Shoot the Street and put their name there, we'll pick one of those people if they would like to go, and we'll send them an invitation for that evening if they'd like to go.
Brilliant, mate. There we go. Well, I've put the information out on how to get in touch with you via the chat panel. As I said, we'll be sending them out an email tomorrow, tomorrow lunchtime, with the follow-up information, and that'll have all the information on how they can connect with you on there as well. So fantastic, mate. Well, thank you for your time, as always, Mark. I love having you on. I love having you share your images with us. I know we've got some stuff planned for the future, so you'll be back on the site real soon.